A lot is going on in the world, so we're going to see what's happening. And of course, we've got a guest today as well, so we're going to see what they're talking about and what they have gone through also. But in the news, we're seeing that Francis Macron has apparently failed to move Xi Jinping over Russia's war on Ukraine. I know that he was going over there trying to get Xi to bring Russia to its senses, but it doesn't seem like he's having much luck in that regards. But we are also seeing that Israel police have stormed a Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and actually one of the other world leaders is trying to say that maybe folks need to take a different approach in that regard. So I did see the Canadian Prime Minister was making his comments in that regards, and if Sasha comes in, we'll see what Sasha's thoughts are along those lines. And of course, as I said, a lot of people are paying attention to what is going on there in both the Middle East as well as what is happening there in Ukraine. And of course, there are other news going on. As a matter of fact, we're going to see if Sasha makes it, because apparently hundreds of thousands lost power as freezing rains hit Ontario and Quebec. And I do know that Sasha comes to us from Canada, so he might have been impacted by that weather as well. But we're going to see if that's the case or not the case, since, you know, it is definitely spring-like, almost summer-like here in Durham, North Carolina, because I know we were in temperatures in the mid-80s, maybe even pushing near 90, so it was definitely feeling like summer-like weather, but they're still having winter-like weather there in Quebec. So definitely that is something that is going on. 800,000 lost power as freezing rains hit Ontario and Quebec, and we're going to see how long it takes them to get back on that track and to get the restored in terms of the power situation. And we do know that while Macron was doing what he was doing in the sense of making things right, or trying to get things on the right track with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and trying to find some kind of way of a middle ground, or at least try to end those tensions some kind of way, he's dealing with his own problems in his own country, because apparently there are still some folks that are quite upset about the raising retirement age. And of course, there have been a number of protests over the last several weeks and everything. So those protests are continuing to go on. So that is some of the things that we're seeing in the news. And of course, people are still paying attention to the trial that was taking place and the indictments over there in New York that took place on, I believe that was Tuesday that those took place and everything. So definitely folks are still trying to figure out how that will play into the whole political scene and into the whole race for the White House. We may be heading to a rematch of Biden and Trump, even though there are other candidates that have declared, such as Huckabee from Arkansas, definitely Nikki Haley from South Carolina, and there might be some others jumping in the fray from both the Republican and the Democratic side. So we're going to see what happens in that regards. But it should be interesting to see what goes on and who comes out of the fray, and if we are heading to that rematch. Some people are saying that they don't want that rematch, but some people are saying that it is going to be an inevitability and all in that space. But it'll be interesting to see whether that is the truth or not the truth. And we do know that the Catholic Church has been in trouble before, and they've gotten into some sort of trouble again, this time over there in Maryland. That's right. There's another accusation of some definite abuse going on, and Maryland is investigation uncovering the sexual abuse of 600 plus children by the Catholic Church. So that is over there in Maryland, and the Maryland Attorney General report into the Archdiocese of Baltimore alleges that 156 Catholic clergy members and others were involved in that case. So another black eye for the Catholic Church and all in that space. And speaking of black eyes, there is still a lot of things going on in the political front. and the Tennessee Republicans are moving to expel 3 Democratic lawmakers for supporting student-led gun protests and all in that space. And speaking of student-led gun protests, I know that here in Durham, one of our schools, the School of the Arts, actually had a massive walkout in protest of a lot of the gun violence that has been going on around the country and all in that space. So that's some of the news stories that I am seeing, and we may get into some other discussions and all in that space. By the way, we do have a Democrat that apparently has jumped into the race and everything. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has announced his 2024 presidential campaign. So it looks like he is going to be challenging Biden for the White House. And of course, that is a significant name in politics and all along those lines. We'll see if that name carries any clout and if he is able to unseat the current president. So that is a interesting development that has recently happened and all in that space. And definitely even there in Kansas, we are seeing that Kansas lawmakers are overriding the governor's veto to enact an anti-trans sports ban. So that is what is going on. So we're going to see what happens in that regard. So it does look like Kansas has enacted a transgender athletic ban, despite what the governor did and all in that space. But like I said, I do have a guest today, so we're going to bring the guest in and see what they are talking about. I know they've got a lot of things going on, and we've also got Dan Worthington, but I did want to bring in Daniel James and see what he's got going on. I know that he was involved in a major case and all in that space and all along those lines. So Daniel, it was great to reach out to you and hear from you through LinkedIn, but if you would just share a little bit about your narrative and some of the things that you've got going on, and then of course we'll have discussions. I do have Dan Worthington with me, and I know he is a lawyer by trade, so he might have some questions as well, and we'll see if any of the other guests pop up also. But Daniel, if you can just share a little bit of your story. When I was reading it, it did seem like you had gone through a tremendous amount, and I'm sure that our listeners here in Pod TV would love to hear your story.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, taking the time out and, having me as a guest. And thank you for the update on the current news today. So that was helpful. I appreciate that. So a little bit about me. I'm a former police officer. I've had a lot of trauma throughout my life as a child. And it led me to choose alcohol as a coping mechanism for dealing with that. My father passed away when I was young. It was a big influence in my life. My mother was working 2 jobs, so there wasn't really a lot of supervision there for for me and my brother and sister. So I chose the route of running the streets and getting into trouble as opposed to following under what my father, that foundation he led or he laid out for us. And eventually just dealing with some trauma during my career, it was I continued on in drinking, and then eventually after I got hurt at work, I decided that pain medicine was going to be my next additive to my arsenal of coping mechanisms, that toolbox that I was building. After I eventually went and got treatment, and I have over almost 6 years now in recovery, I've been being more of a advocate for recovery and being somebody, a professional recovery coach, and just somebody that has, I'm all in with unbelievable amount of passion in just being that support system, just to, be a part of the solution.
Yeah, that makes
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Along those same lines, you did mention that you were a retired police officer, and I
Mhm.
know a lot of times people are having conversation around not just Black Lives Matter, but
Mhm.
Blue Lives Matter as well. So I was just wondering your take on the police system and the
Yeah.
police that exists now, because I do know that there are conversations that go on around that topic. And I know that one of the things that you talk about is that you've even seen some of the systematic racism and everything. But I'd love to hear your take, and I want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a very big topic, a hot topic, and an important topic that needs to be addressed. I mean, our country's been on this system for almost 300 years, right? It's been a while, and it's broken. It hasn't worked. It fell into the definition of insanity, as we all know. You keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, and it's just being somebody that now has been on both sides of the system, the criminal justice system, as being a police officer. And I did I committed a felony. It was I had a business in the medical field, doing medical supplies and dispensing that. And there was a compounding company that came to me, and my partner at the time, who we were dispensing compounding creams, and ended up finding out that a lot of the things that we were doing it wasn't legal, and I ended up getting charged for that, and did got sentenced to 9 months. So I've seen both sides of the criminal justice system now. So I have an appreciation of a lot of the privileges that I've had throughout my life. It was a definite eye opener, especially being a white male in the U.S. It's You start to realize and start to see where that systemic racism lies. How people are marginalized. You it's As far as the system itself. A lot of talk has been surrounding whether or not to defund the police.
Mhm.
And I've been in attending Rutgers University to be eventually a social worker. I only have a few more classes to go, but I'm in a class right now that is you know uh, political policing and systemic racism class that I'm taking. It's a wonderful class, and I really believe that a lot of the issues in the police department has to do with training.
Mhm.
I think that just knowing from my own training that I have, it's a lot of it's done over the computer. There's really no human interaction where you get the emotions involved and really get a clear understanding of exactly what other people are going through, whether they're black or brown, or anybody that is marginalized in our country. And just having that just having your emotions evolve and really getting a clear understanding of why did they commit this burglary? Like, what is the real deep issue under that? And really trying not to jump to arresting them, but to find out what is really the issue here and how can we help them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that one of the things I'm going to bring Dan in very shortly and everything that folks talk about is if you go to a prison, and you did say that you served a short bid there in prison as a police officer, that can be one of the most difficult things. I mean, definitely I mentioned what was going on with the Catholic Church, and I'm not saying that it is similar, but I do know that just like we don't respect people that have abused children and animals, a lot of times if police go into the system, they are given a very hard time. So I just wanted your own take on
Yeah.
that, and that's something that you had to deal with.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't a fan favorite at first. They knew as soon as I walked in, everybody was very familiar with who I was. I mean, it wasn't a crime of the century, but they have their ways of finding out who is coming in, who the new fish is. So, and I'll tell you what, it was a little rough in the beginning. Um, it was challenging, just the whole process itself, just from the healthcare that's provided. But once the other inmates got to know who I was, and that, um, generally understand that it wasn't so much the cop and me that, they had any sort of resentment or anything. It wasn't really that. It was, they started to really see that the true human being behind me is Danny. And you started to see a shift where I end up making a lot of contacts and networking there. And I got a whole new perspective on people. I mean, I've always, when I was a child, I'm sure like a lot of kids that, their father or mother brings them past the prison and say, that's where bad people are. And that's where bad people go. And that's what we always thought. And when I got to the latter part of my career, and of course, when I got inside a prison cell, and you start to see these people, you really meet a lot of good people that really made just a bad decision in life. And one of the things that I'm very interested in learning more about is there's somebody I've met on LinkedIn as well. His name is Jay Jordan. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is somebody that kind of, just reading his posts, he's somebody that I went and had a aha moment, because, I'm doing my sentence, I'm done, and you still are sentenced afterwards because of life. I mean, trying to find a job. I have a, full career that I did, and I was a good cop, except for this one thing that I did, and it led up to a lot of other little, stupid mistakes. But the part of and I wanted to mention, a part of my recovery has been to make amends, and to that was a part of me going forward. And actually, before they even knew that I was involved, I went forward, I got an attorney, and I said, look, I'm involved with this, and here's the problem. But let me step back and get back on track. I saw that what Jay Jordan brought up was, people, especially people marginalized, continue to be sentenced in life where they can't get a job, they can't get licensed somewhere, they can't get certificates, or like they can't become an insurance agent, or for instance, with me, I'm probably going to have an issue eventually to get licensed as a social worker, where here I am, I'm trying to, again, be a part of the solution. It's been my passion for a long time. I really actually never wanted to be a police officer. I was kind of like a blank, and get off the pot. You got to do something with your life. Go take the test. So I always wanted to be either a social worker or a therapist. And now I have the opportunity to turn my life around. But again, I'm probably going to be continuing on being sentenced. And there's some people out there that will probably be, would agree and say, you know what? Good. I'm glad that you are. I don't know. But that's where I'm at right now, where I'm going to start beginning that advocacy for that.
No doubt about that. Like I said, I'm going to bring in Dan. He might have some questions as well and everything. But one thing that I was curious about is that there's definitely been some push. Dan has even talked about it, as have I, about the need to maybe reform some of the police system as well. And I do have a police officer cousin, actually a member of the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, that has been in there for a number of years. And while he has pointed out to me that sometimes there are rules that we think are easy that are maybe not as easy as we think they are, in terms of like where you aim at and all in that space and all along those lines. So that was some conversations we were having during the Trayvon Martin incident and some other incidences that have taken place and all along those lines. But I'm just wondering, as a former police officer, and as we're hearing even certain politicians, even Trump, has come out and said that he would like to see some reforms, parts of that, because of what he has gone through recently and everything. But he has said that he would like to see some changes in the FBI and the DOJ, and maybe even what some funding sources are. But I just wondering, as a former police officer, what your take is in terms of what we can do to improve the law enforcement system.
Yeah, I think that it's and I'm in the early stages of really getting a good grasp of understanding exactly what the community is looking for. And so when you hear defund the police right off the bat, people in the police world are thinking that they're trying to disband them, and it's not the case. uh, I definitely think that we need to get away from that paramilitary style. Of course, there are safety issues that police have to, be able to have the right equipment to be able to handle certain calls. But there's a lot of calls out there that you don't need that military style, and I think it's just really allocating some funds into really good training, more human to human contact training. Bringing people in, have an understanding of what like a diversity and oppression is, and really have an understanding of what other people, what people are doing, like myself, that are in situations, and a lot of people that are either they're coming out of prison or they're done, they're looking to, they're in recovery and they're trying to get their life back on track, and they're going to trip along the way a few times. And what are those systems that are in place, and how can the police help with picking them up as opposed to keeping them down, and by arresting them and continue to arrest, really find out when somebody's burglarizing a house, well, exactly why did you do this, like not in a sense of trying to find the criminal part of it and being able to lock down the case, but really having that humanistic side where they are really trying to identify, okay, he needs money, he needs why is a mother going and stealing formula at Walmart, trying to find out why that stuff is happening and occurring, and really getting deep down into the emotional part of it, as opposed to just locking them up, adding another charge, adding court fees, adding fines and punishment, and it just does not fix anything. All it does is make matters worse, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the other things I was curious about is I had the pleasure a couple of days ago of talking to a woman that had gone through this system and had actually got caught up in a whole drug culture and the drug wars and everything. And she did serve some time, and actually a much more extended time than you did and everything. And actually, I think she was supposed to have served many years, but her faith walk actually got her out of that situation quicker than she thought that it would and everything, because she was definitely a believer and a devout believer. So I was just wondering how much has faith played a part in your own life and your own journey, whether it was in the police work or whether it's in this current work that you're doing now. So just wondering how much has that spiritual walk helped in your own journey and in your own dealings with the various things that you have dealt with.
Yeah, I am definitely. I believe in God. I'm Christian, and faith plays definitely a major part of where I'm at now. I kind of lost that along the my journey from when from when my father passed away. It was just declining, and I always tell people, whether it's if you don't believe in a God, find something to believe in, because whether it's universe or just something, some sort of higher power has helped me. And it might not be something that you're interested in, but just give it a try, and put a little effort into it, because there's got to be something out there. I totally believe in that. I mean, I believe in God, but there's somebody out there that is just protecting you and is there for you as a guide and a help. And there's as far as with my faith, yeah, I lost that. And it was something that once I brought that back into my life, it played a major role. There was a lot of acceptance that I had to do. There was a lot of responsibility I had to take. There was ultimately, though, I had to I'm an AA member, and I had to give my will over to God and allow him to guide me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. What are some of the things that surprised you and all in that space when you got into the law enforcement field? Because I'm sure there were probably some things that you were not expecting when you got into law enforcement. I know people talk about the unity that exists among the brothers in blue and all of that, but there's other things that might have surprised you as well. But what are some of the things that surprised you when you got involved in law enforcement?
Yeah, I was when I became a police officer, it was definitely a culture shock for me. Like I mentioned, I actually when I passed the test and I started getting the interviews, I actually started getting scared. I was like, okay, this is real. I'm going to be doing this, and I have no knowledge of what I'm getting myself involved in. There is a brotherhood. There definitely is that brother and sisterhood, and the but uh, there's a lot of things going on in that, that brotherhood and sisterhood. There's a lot of things a lot of politics involved. Um, there's a lot of there's different cliques, and who is favored more than the other. There's always nepotism, and as far as with me, I definitely realized, especially when I became president of our union, that um, it, it it was something that I put it this way, it was a culture that I was not really used to. It was something that I realized, okay, the politics was just not something that I was able to grasp. I just um, I wasn't really that type of person. So eventually, I end up stepping down, and I just didn't want to deal with that power struggle. And again, I was also in my addiction at that time with alcohol, so I just wasn't really the right person to be in that position. But eventually, like I said, once I started attending Rutgers is when I really and I took and I mentioned this before, but I took a diversity and oppression class, and I've just went around, even as a police officer, I carried myself as treating everybody like I would treat, my mother. And but the thing that I didn't really know and understand is what my privileges are and how I've got uh, more advantages than others. And that was huge for me. That was my an aha moment for me, because I never realized that. I just went about life and did what I had to do, and but I never realized what are other people going through? What are their struggles? And so that part of policing, I think it would be huge in changing the culture.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know one of the other things that people have been talking about, and I know your thoughts around this, is you're going into social work, you're getting that degree in social work, and there has been conversations. We've talked about it on the news. We've definitely talked about it on various other shows about having social workers or people that are actually trained in social work
Mhm.
going out on police calls. I know that that has been a conversation here in Durham, North Carolina. It's been a conversation in a number of other places as well. I think that there were some initiatives where you were at up there around New Jersey, New York area, and all in that space. But what is your thoughts as one that is operated in both of those lanes about the notion of having people that can mediate some very difficult situations on the call with the police officers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I definitely think that social workers should be a part of the police organization, as far as being able to go and handle calls. Or are they what type of calls they'll be able to go on? I'm not sure. Um, at that time, I mean, obviously, it's going to be something that's going to be related, in with emotions and maybe financial issues, or I really don't want to um, guess. I would think, though, that at least having them at the police department to be able to help people, that are dealing with struggles. I think that's huge. I really do. I think to be able to have that resource available, uh, you know, it would be something that definitely worth looking into. And there is a lot of talks. It was actually part of my my first half of the class that I'm taking it, we would discuss that, and I think it's something that why not give it a shot and see what happens? I mean, like I mentioned, it's what we've been doing for the last several hundred years is just not worked. It's marginalized people. It's put people in a position where it's it's like you got the government's got their foot on their back and they can't be able to recoup. So to be able to have social workers available, maybe it'll be something as a resource where they could turn to, as opposed to uh, some of the things that they've been doing to kind of get them in a bad situation.
Yeah. Last question I was going to ask, and then, like I said, Dan may have some questions. I did see that Sasha popped in, and of course, we're going to get a update from him around what's going on in Ukraine and also what's going on with the weather there in Canada. Hopefully, he'll be on camera very shortly and be able to share that and everything. But I do know that you were in that life coaching space as well. So, what are some of the things that you have learned during your entire journey that have surprised you and that you think will resonate with our listeners and everything? So, what are some of the life lessons that you have learned?
Well, I definitely learned, especially with myself, is that I can't control anything except for myself. But in the beginning, when I first started out, you're coming out the gate and you're excited, you want to save the world, and then you realize that okay, you got to take a step back because there are a lot of people out there that have a very diverse mindset. So you one of the things that's important about anything, any sort of coaching, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. Obviously, you've been doing this for a while, is to meet the person where they're at. That's the foundation right there. And then you develop that plan for them that makes sense, that sets them up for success. And just your values, your principles, those are very important for helping this person out, but being able to help them just to start to gather up a bunch of little wins, and just turn those little wins can turn into eventually bigger wins, and then get them on track to ultimately live their dreams and make them a reality. um, as far as with with my recovery coach, and that's what I primarily work with, is it's definitely a very rewarding, but yet it can get frustrating because you want them so bad, but you really have to let go of that control and understand that they have to want it. And it's, whether it's even my friends or family, my network, who are still struggling, it's just one of those things where you have to realize that you can't control the situation. You just provide those tools, you provide that help, and just be available.
Yeah, that makes sense. How important, and like I said, Dan might have a question as well, but how important do you think law enforcement and law in general are going to be in the upcoming political landscape that we're going to go into? We're getting ready to go into 2024. I know that all the candidates usually will make law enforcement or support of the law as part of their campaign slogans and their campaign background and everything, but you were in that space. You were definitely involved in the criminal space as well. So how important do you think these issues are going to be in the 2024 election?
I mean, for the last how many years, that I know of, I was more of like I started realizing politics around Reagan years, but the war on crime, the war on drugs, and in these wars, it's just it's got that that negative sound to it. It sounds so aggressive, and everybody says we're going to fight crime and we're going to do this and we're going to lock people up. And is that really the solution? Is to just eliminate, like, take these people out of the picture? That's all that's being done. Is they're being taken out of the picture, and then they have no room to eventually, because of the system we have in place, there is no room for them to recoup. There's no the job market itself, and with it, even in its current state, it's very tough to get a job. And you add on a charge. One simple charge would be a simple, a shoplifter, because maybe a mother was trying to get because she needed formula and she didn't have the money. They need to go and really find a solution. I think where they're heading with the social workers involved, especially having them involved in the police departments. The only concern that I have, and it really comes down to mindset, is the culture. If it would be great to have the social work culture integrate with the police department's model than the other way around, because then it's just going to be a fail. And that's what's really where they have to put that training involved. They have to get the people's understanding of what other people are going through in life. Like I said, whether they're black or brown, anybody is marginalized, just really having a grasp of what's going on in their life and go from there.
Makes sense. Dan, you've been listening for a while. You have any questions or thoughts and everything? We've get into some of the other news that I brought up as well. And I'm sure you're going to have a thought about Mr. Kennedy running for office and everything. But I just wanted your thoughts about what Mr. James has been talking about, and if you have any questions of your own.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I feel your pain. Those folks that get into the cycle of dependency and or other kinds of things that end up enslaving them, I agree with you that the only way to break that cycle is to embrace hope in the higher power, because that's the only thing that you can rely on to give you the strength to overcome those weaknesses and those proclivities. Now, I have a little different take on policing, although, I've never been a police officer. I've been a military officer and that kind of thing, but I'm not a police officer. I think it is possible to give police officers more social science training and that kind of thing. You know as well as I do, because you were there, that when you strap a gun on your side and you're out in the public, you never know what you're going to encounter. Especially nowadays with all the wackos and everything else and mentally ill people. I think our gun problem is a mental illness problem. I think that anyone that commits gun violence is probably mentally ill or has issues that are related to mental illness and mental instability. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. They just happen to use a gun or a knife or drugs or whatever they use to kill people. And so it's the instrument isn't the focus, it's the people that are the focus. So I agree with you on that. I disagree with the way that many of the new age prosecutors have approached crime, meaning, pat their hands, smack their hands, and release them for even violent crimes. Alvin Bragg is infamous for this in New York. Except when it comes to Donald Trump, right? So you create misdemeanors into felonies when it comes to Trump. Felonies, hey, we don't even know what that is in New York, right? That's the way it works there. And so the politicization of law enforcement is one of the greatest risks to our democracy, because it's difficult enough to sort out the issues of human intention and what drives criminal behavior and those kinds of choices. And then you try to politicize it with all this other crap that's going on because of the fragmentation of left and right and progressives and all the other junk. It creates more divisiveness and distance to solving the problem than it does to solve the problem. The solution is in embracing higher power. A lot of the progressive side doesn't get that because higher power isn't something a lot of folks believe in anymore, becoming less and less prevalent in our society, when a return to God and faith ought to be a huge priority in our society, if we expect to have the blessings of our republic, because that's what our republic was predicated on, was this idea of divine power and public virtue. Even all of our rights are predicated on our supreme being, or God, right? Our inalienable rights come from Him, and not out of a vacuum or from the state. And that's very important. We're human beings first, and the government is here to serve us, not the other way around. We are the people. The government was created by the people for the people, and government is acting more like the other way around, that we serve them, we're their servants, we're their slaves. And that's not true. And I think a lot of the attitudes of law enforcement reflect that attitude. The other thing that's caused a lot of problem in law enforcement is the fact that a lot of law enforcement agencies have been given military grade weapons and that kind of thing, and they look more like black ops units than they do police officers, and that sends the wrong message. The cop on the beat, there's a lot of distrust between the public and police officers. If you talk to a lot of the minority communities, the majority of the minority communities, they're not in favor of downsizing police force because of the violence in their communities. It's unsafe if you don't have a police presence. And so where is this downsizing argument coming from? It's not healthy for especially minority communities where there's high incidence of crime and black on black crime, where it can't be controlled, where gangs are a problem, right? And you have this culture with the gangs and that kind of thing. So between drugs, gangs, people, human trafficking, and all those issues, it creates an overwhelming problem that has to be addressed in some logical way by law enforcement, imbued with with more training about the social sciences and that kind of thing. But then that's just my view.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Daniel, definitely Dan Worthington brings up some interesting thoughts, but you went to both sides of the law enforcement journey and all in that space. What is your thoughts around sentencing? Because I have heard people that have said that they don't feel that sentencing is necessarily fair and all along those lines, but I would love to hear your thoughts about sentencing and all along those lines, but definitely would love to hear your thoughts in that space. And I also see that Kim Calhoun, who is one of the founders of the network, has joined. I know she's got some thoughts around law enforcement as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about the sentencing aspect.
Mm-hmm. Is 2 seconds, a few seconds. One of the things I wanted to touch on real quick is the people in, say, minority communities are looking for law enforcement to be a presence, and that's true. That's a true statement. What I'm more concerned with, if the police departments and government treat those people that are being marginalized in a patient doctor mindset, what is really the deep down root problem that's going on, and diagnose that issue, and then being able to prescribe something to them so that they can not go and turn to needing the police in that area. I think that's really what I was getting at, is just trying to get to a deeper level to find out why are these people, whether that's social work research, and really getting down to understanding what is the real issue. Because the issue isn't necessarily the crime itself. I mean, that's a criminal issue, but I'm saying on a personal level, what is exactly the real issue on why they went to that route? What can we do to support them, and being able to help them in a way? I'm not saying provide money, just giving money away, whether it's, welfare or anything like that. I'm not saying that's the answer. That's for something for a different topic. But what I'm suggesting is really just having a clear understanding. As far as the sentencing, it especially on a federal level, it is astronomical. It is, the numbers are. I mean, I was very, very fortunate. Prior to being sentenced, I was already in the process of going out there and helping people to not make the same choices that I made. Way before I even knew that I was having my, the criminal matter was coming down the pipe. And so what happened was the judge just saw that. He saw the authenticity behind that. I'm doing this out of the genuine, authentic side of me of doing this generally, and also trying to help people. And I got a very favorable sentence, and I'm very grateful for that. But there's a lot of people that I spoke with when I was inside. 5 years for drug possession, 10 years for whether they were dealing drugs. And the thing is that really, what does that really do? What does that do? Because when I got my reentry packet, along with a bunch of other people, we were supposed to be given a class, okay? And it's supposed to be a week long. I got, one of the inmates got a stack of reentry forms, a packet about this big that said everything: how do you get your driver's license, how do you get your social security information, how to get a job and everything, and just slapped it on a table inside the unit and said, have this done by, the end of the day or tomorrow morning, and you'll get first step credits. And I mean, that is what went on, at least where I was in that prison. And that is really scary.
I want to say that Kim has joined us. I know Kim has been involved in some things around law enforcement as well. So I don't know if Kim's been listening and she's got some thoughts as well. They definitely got about another 10 minutes or 14 minutes to go and everything. But I know Kim has always got some insight as well. She's definitely done some work in that field, and has actually even had some patents in that field as well. So love to hear your thoughts, Kim, as to this conversation.
Well, my internet's going in and out, so it's been bouncing back and forth. But this is a passion of mine, this kind of conversation. But moreover, I think to address something that Daniel stated, which is, the choices he made, right? The choices you made. Again, it kept going in and out. So I missed part of what the consequences were and some of the things that you were doing. And I hate that about the choices that they made out here where I live, and we got a lack of internet. So, but honestly, I think you nailed it on the head, is the choices we make. About 98% of our problems are the ones we create ourselves. And until you learn to face or address them, you're not going to move forward and get better and make better solutions and choices for your community. We all make mistakes, but the question is, do we correct ourselves from that mistake? See, the greater sin is not learning from our history, not reading the books, not learning from our history, whether the books are real or not. There's so much written in books that somewhere in time that may have happened, right? We just don't know. There's so much fiction, there's so much truth, and then there's so much true fiction, as I call it. So I truly believe that there's always an answer. We have to move forward. There's always a truth, but there's always more than one truth. And we just have to learn from it. Some of the things that I worked on was helping officers find the real answers by collecting data and analyzing it, and also solving some of their biggest problems with real-time data collection and analytics to generate alerts and notices as things were happening. And, there was a lot of resistance to this kind of technology because everybody goes, oh, that's Matrix, or it doesn't work. It did, and it does work. And it is very much like what Matrix is, because we create and invent things that we read about and learn about because we go, oh, that can be done. Eventually, it will be done. We got flying cars now. I've never dreamed I'd see that. I won't get in them, but I've been asked to get in a self-driving, autonomous driving car. I will not do that. Will not do that. But I've been blessed to be a part of some of the greatest achievements in our technology, but majority of them were generated to help mankind and to help create a better quality life for us. But Daniel, in that statement that you made, and then moving forward, and you might have answered this, what is it that we can do in a community or law enforcement or justice to have made this resolution better, not just for you, but everyone?
Yeah, as you mentioned that I hit the nail on the head, you hit the nail on the head as well. And it really is getting to the truth, getting to your truth, and really having that soul searching moment where you got to get honest with yourself. What exactly are you doing? In whether it's in law enforcement, you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a businessman, entrepreneur, what are you actually doing? I do sales and lead generation world. And so, everything if you're familiar with sales, everything is emotional, but it really comes down to that bringing out that authentic side and being honest with yourself. So, as far as, moving forward, you really just have to get to that moment in your life where you have to turn that switch. Like, same thing with people that commit crimes. They made that decision. They made that choice. Okay, so what are you going to do after that? Having the resources available to help them maybe get that aha moment. Maybe there's something out there that, gets them to whether, again, get social workers in the police departments, maybe just having them available and more accessible. It'll be somewhere that they could turn to, and maybe they have that aha moment. Maybe they're like, you know what, I need to get honest with myself, and this person helped me out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Daniel, along those same lines, we'll bring Sasha in. He may have some thoughts as well and everything. But as we were winding down, we got about another 8 or so minutes to go and everything. But Daniel, how much of a quick action was it for you to learn how to make those quick decisions and everything? Because one of the things that I know my cousin told me, and I've had several conversations with him, is that you don't really know what it's like to have to shoot somebody until you have to pull that trigger and make that quick decision. And oftentimes it is a quick split-second decision that you have to make, and there are things that you're going to do to aim at certain places. That, as he told me, you don't want to necessarily try to be aiming at the leg, because that person will have adrenaline and they could still come rushing you in all in that space. So sometimes you have to aim for that kill target. And I just hate to put it that way, but it's what you have to do sometimes. But I was wondering, how much was that just something that you had to face?
Well, one, I'm very fortunate. I never had to be in that position to take somebody's life. Have I been in positions where I've had my gun out and drew it down on somebody? Yeah, there was several times people, that had either guns in the car, or they had, they were coming at you with a knife or something. But I'm very happy that I never had to be in that situation. I had coworkers that have, unfortunately. And, they're here's the thing. When we do our training for, down at the range, the target is focused on the center mass. You're from the belt up to the head. And so I was not the greatest shot, I'll tell you that. And I'm sure anybody that I worked with is listening to this, they'll definitely attest to that. But as far as like the old, shoot them in the knee, and that it's a lot harder than you think. And then you have in the back of your head, I was thinking of it. I'll give you a quick situation. We had a call where it sounded like shots fired. And so the neighbor, a couple of neighbors called. We got several calls. There was a domestic going on at the same exact time. However, two totally different situations. What happened was there was a factory the warehouse that was next to us was doing some concrete work, and the sledgehammers hitting the wall echoed, and it sounded like gunshots. And then we had this domestic going on, which was literally right there in the same area. So the call came in as that. We were looking for the gentleman that was involved with the domestic. It was a verbal dispute. Nobody was physically hurt, a husband, wife. And then what happened was he had a warrant. So we're looking for him just to have a conversation with him. He jumped out of the closet, scared the living crap out of me, and he could have gotten shot. I mean, it was very, very quick. And so those are some of the situations that law enforcement are under. And I was in a small town, 14 square miles. So imagine what that is. There is a lot of stress behind that. It is not easy to overcome when to have all those emotions going on, the adrenaline, the background of the call. And like I said, you had that situation where it could have went one way or the other. How I restrained myself just from my training and just getting a good look, but it's split seconds.
I do have a question for you because I've been to a lot of the training facilities for law enforcement. In your time, what do you believe is one of the worst crimes that we do not address properly in this country?
I would say that that's a great question. I don't think it's necessarily it's not necessarily a crime. It's more of a civil matter. But I think one of the most dangerous calls that law enforcement could go on that really needs to be addressed is the domestic violences. I mean, I've just always remembered, I don't know what the numbers are now, but I just remember for years, it's always been known as the most dangerous call to go on. So if that's the case, then that's something that obviously needs a lot of attention.
12 million female victims a year, 24 children victims a year, over 10,000 fatalities of females a year, which is more than what happens in most wars in 10 years. Officers are in great danger. Many of the fatalities occur in domestic violent calls. They are now told that or instructed that they cannot go to those calls alone. So you're absolutely right. It's one of my biggest passions to try to help curve or end the fatal ending stories because nobody really takes that one on. The recidivism is horrific. After you release an offender, usually within the first 48 hours, 85% of the time, he will repeat that crime and it will be worse. So, I mean, it's something that we don't address properly because we do release the offenders with just nothing more than a piece of paper and nothing to protect the victims. And the burden of proof is always on the victim, and usually by the time you're able to enforce that burden of proof, the victim is dead. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, no doubt about that and everything. And I know that Kim has done some patent work in that field and all along those lines. I know we're going to wind down and everything. Sasha, you've been listening. I don't know if you have any comments or thoughts that you want to share really quickly. I know we've got to do our pre-record and all in that space, but if there's any thoughts that you would like to share before we get out of here. And Daniel, you've been a great guest. I hope that you'll make a return trip and all of that, but we have definitely enjoyed getting your insight.
Thank you all. And thank you everyone for, your feedback. It was really helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bless you on your journey. God bless you on your journey.
Thank you for your services.
So much. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Sasha, any thoughts?
I was never part of any enforcement unit or actions. And the only thing is, when I was young, I was serving in Soviet Army for 2 years. And there was the rule, first shoot, then ask the question. It was always like that. It's if you are, they put you on a very different scale. Here, you are part of the army, so you are part of the governmental structure. And here is just a common man. So the rights are absolutely unequal. and to use your advantage and to protect yourselves the best you can. And because if you are part of the governmental property, your first duty is to protect yourself. As a part of the governmental property, you shoot first. If you kill, great. If you don't kill, so at least for your opponent, it would be very difficult to resist you, because most likely you will be maimed. Now, if you miss, that means your training was lousy and you have to go back to learn how to shoot. So that's sort of very simple. I'm not trying to justify that at all. I'm just saying that at least it works. So I wish many cases where in the United States recently there are a lot of perpetrators were killed by police because they refused to follow certain orders. And I wish the first thing people would learn, complete submission to police or any enforcement. Complete,
Exactly.
don't thinking, complete submission.
Don't mouth off. Don't talk back. Just comply.
Absolutely. Just follow the orders, follow commands. It doesn't matter.
I want an attorney.
Yeah.
Is it?
If they're justified.
And there are some, I know we're wrapping up and everything. There are some
Good
programs,
point,
and I'm sure
Sasha.
Daniel's aware of those as well, that there are efforts to make sure that you do that. I know that Pocket is one. There are some others that have been featured on this network where they encourage you to do what you just said, which is follow the rules and don't ask a lot of questions and just kind of like go along and comply and don't try to challenge and everything. You can challenge later. And I think that Daniel would agree with that as well. So on that note, we're getting ready to get on out of here and all in that space. This has been a great conversation. And like I said, I do hope that Daniel will come back and share some more insights, but we're glad to have this great conversation and glad that I was able to find you on LinkedIn and bring you in to share your wisdom from both sides of what goes on, because you've had experience in both in law enforcement and in the incarcerated space as well. So definitely glad to get both of those inputs and all in that way. So we're going to get out of here and we'll have another show on tomorrow. And then of course we've got all kinds of guests coming next week as well. So definitely want to thank you, Daniel, for joining us on this particular edition.
Thank you again, Mark. And I'll definitely be back again.
Sounds great.
Take care.